Hello again everybody and welcome back to Test Flight in the MiG-15. And we're on to my favorite part of these. It's learning the systems and learning the procedures and figuring out what the procedures mean. So I'm going to start from the beginning like I always do with just a basic startup, maybe a taxi and a shutdown. Just kind of treating this almost like a standard fighter transition course where you just go to the aircraft, learn the basics, do all the academics work up front, and then just incrementally get more and more complex, working your way up to takeoff and landing, navigation, and just system use while airborne, and then eventually weapons employment. Now, we've already done the weapons employment up front, but I'll probably reattack that at the end of the series anyway, just to, now that will have by that time figured out a lot more of the aircraft systems, there's bound to have been something that I missed up front. So it should be a lot of fun. Now, I am, like I say, going to start off with just a startup and shutdown, but as I do this, I'm going to be focusing a lot on the systems and figuring out how they work. So I don't know how long this is going to take. Well, the longer the better, from my point of view. The longer that it takes, the more stuff there is included in this module to learn, and that's what I love about this. So I'm going to go with the instant action mission, and it's going to be the cold start. So if you're following along at home, like a lot of folks do, feel free to follow along and learn this along with me, and I'll see you in the cockpit. Okay, and we're picking up on the ground at Krimskare Base. I've got a MiG-15 taxiing from my left. I gave him a chance to finish his startup and get out of here, so it's not going to be too loud on us. If it's too loud right now, I'll kind of subdue some of that sound. Okay, 364 going out for a quick flight. Okay, so first things first, let me bring up my kneeboard and show you what all I've got. Of course, you've seen that I already have the quick start guide, and that's going to be our primary reference for the procedure for startup and shutdown, taxi, and all the stuff that we're going to be doing in this mission. But I have also got some of the information from the DCS website, the product page for the MiG-15, which I'm finding is, if you're an English language speaker, is as of right now the best place to go for systems descriptions. I have the Russian language manual that has a lot of this information. Actually, this is translated from the Russian language manual. Yeah, I'll have a link to this page in the video description. And we have diagrams of all the major systems and some text description. So as we get to these during the startup procedure and start to look at them in more detail, we'll have a quick guide to go off of to really figure this stuff out. So it took that MiG-15 about 15 seconds to start up and taxi, and this is such a simple aircraft. I can already tell by reading through the procedures a couple of times that, yeah, you could just do that. You could just hop in, throw a couple of switches, and be off and running in a big hurry. But what we want to do in this, as you know, what I always do in these, is seek to understand why we're performing the procedure in the order that we're doing it in, and what we're actually accomplishing by making all these switch throws and doing all the stuff that we do. What's actually happening on the aircraft, and that's where the systems diagrams are going to come in handy. Now, first things first, of course, is figuring out where in general things are in the aircraft. And what you'll find is that every aircraft has its own little flow. These are set up in a way that makes sense once you figure out the system. So what I'm going to do, and what I always do, is take a couple of minutes just to look around the cockpit, figure out generally where the controls for each system are. That way, as we perform the procedure and start to look for a specific switch or combination of switches or gauges or whatever, we'll know generally where to look. So I'll start at the left and start to work my way around, just tinkering with stuff as we go. Okay, so I've got a box back here, apparently some sort of, maybe communications. That looks like sort of a like a VHF frequency. It could be communications related. First aid kit. I've got oxygen system controls. I've got an oxygen supply valve, air valve. Okay, that's like a emergency valve. Okay, so oxygen system controls down here to the left. I've got a switch that's going to be related to the communications comm nav system, navigation and communications. Okay, I've got another one right here. This is going to be air brake open and close. Now I have that also mapped to my joystick. This button right here is what actually deploys and extends the air brake. So I assume this is just like a master switch for the system, and I've also got a light associated with the air brake. I've got more communications controls. I have a signal flare switch on and off. Okay, so I've got, looks like 3 signal flares. We'll definitely be playing around with these here in a little bit once I believe I have to have power on the aircraft. Obviously I do if there's a master switch for the system for those to work. Okay, I've got some switches that appear to be more navigation. So, okay, that's that. I've got the flap lever right here. I've got, what are you? Engine stop, open, close. So this is like a fuel shutoff valve that I'll be actuating and moving around as we get into the engine startup. I've got a throttle friction lever, throttle controls right here, communications master switch or mic button right here, and I've also got the starter switch right here underneath this guard. So flip the guard up and then press this to initiate the engine start. And I've got right here a hydro boost lever, and that's going to be associated with like a utility hydraulic system that's built into the as like a little hydraulic boost for the ailerons. I'm not sure actually if during everything that you've seen so far I've had that on or off during the first phase of this. I'm not sure, to be honest, so we'll tinker with that, and once we get back up in the air we'll see what the effect of having that on and off is. Okay, coming around to this panel, this looks like just a lights, transfer pump, ignition switch, boost pump, so it's fuel system controls, among a couple of other things. Air start switch, so we have an air start capability built in kind of up here. That's all that I can see there. Okay, and of course I've got my trim control for the elevator. I've got external lights. Looks like a little, like a map light. No, it's like a fixed light. I think that's like a little fixed floodlight, it appears. Okay, coming up here we have Arc 5 near far NB switch, so more navigation equipment. We've got our gun arming panel, oxygen system, pressure or quantity. Let me see, that would be expressed in kilograms per square centimeter, so that's a pressure gauge for the oxygen. Got an oxygen flow indicator right there. I've got a switch for the nose light, so I have it's kind of like the TACVIEW landing light up there in the nose that we'll see here in a little bit. Okay, and then the landing gear lever. Okay, landing gear indicators. I've got an emergency gear release for the right and the left gear. Okay, then we get into our main instruments, which we've seen a lot of already. I'll just come around these as well, and I know I'm taking a lot more time than usual on this, is because I genuinely don't know the cockpit layout of the MiG-15. I usually spend a lot of time going over the manual, but since I can't read the manual, I'm just kind of doing this as I go. As I hear MiG-15 taking off and getting airborne behind us. Okay, very cool. Okay, so we have this. It's a radar altimeter. So, okay, I did not know there was a radar or radio altimeter built into the MiG-15. I have different settings. This switch is going to... Okay, so it has like two different ranges on the gauge. So this is 0 to 120 meters. Flip this switch, now I've got 0 to 1200 meters. That's pretty neat. Okay, so I've got my altimeter. I've got the knob that I can use to mess with my altimeter setting. I've got it to the QFE setting, 0 field altitude right now. Okay, airspeed indicator, which we've already seen. ADI, or just attitude indicator. So I've got this that I can use to calibrate the horizon line up and down. I can also push to cage, so... Or is it pull to cage? It says push to cage, so okay. We'll see that in action once I get power on the aircraft. I believe that for that to function would have to have power. You can see that I have the red warning flag up there telling me that this instrument is not working or functioning anyway. Okay, I've got your standard chronometer. So it looks like that's... Okay, puts it into 3 different modes. This is going to be the kind of like the start-stop switch on, like if it's a if you're using the timer function. Okay, you can also twist it. That's, I assume that would be, usually that's where you wind it. It's a like in this case, I would imagine that it's a mechanical chronometer. That's very, very common to see even in modern aircraft. You wouldn't necessarily want your like a simple time reference like this to be tied into the power system just in case you do lose power to it. So you often do see mechanical chronometers in aircraft. Okay, we've got our, what are you, Mach number? I could, assuming this is a Mach meter, I could have used that before because I was trying to do conversions in my head. I think that's what that is. Actually, let me pause real quick and see what that is. I'll be right back. Well, oddly enough, the quick start guide and the little quick reference sheet that comes in it didn't say. Yeah, that's got to be a Mach meter, or yeah, Mach meter. So we'll get to that once we get airborne. Okay, I've got my vertical velocity indicator. I've got my fuel gauge, and that's just your standard Russian fuel gauge. I know that from from the Illusion 2. Okay, so coming to that over here, indicator lights. Okay, don't really get any kind of an indication. If I read Russian, of course, I'd be able to tell exactly what that is, but okay, we'll scope all this stuff out as we get into the startup and shutdown, I'm sure. Okay, and of course the armament system controls down here on the center pedestal, which we have already seen. Okay, so we have an unknown gauge. This is another one. Okay, let me just do it this way. Okay, I've got no indication right here telling me where it's at, again, on my little quick reference. So that's got to be, let me see if I can just infer what this is. That's got to be some kind of like a navigation aid. It's 360 degrees, so that's just too much of a coincidence for it to be like a engine instrument. It wouldn't, no, it's got to be a navigation aid. Probably like the NDV, like a radio that gives you like a bearing. Based on your NDB setting. That's what I would guess this would be. Okay, so coming over to this one now. Okay, I'll just kind of use this as a cheat sheet now. Okay, 5, engine RPM indicator. Okay, so it goes from, on the inner dial, 0 to 5,000 RPM, and then it goes out to the outer dial and comes all the way around to 1,500 RPM. Okay, got it. Okay, we just got our standard HSI, horizontal situation indicator, which I'll be able to choose a desired course or heading by using the knob. Okay, very cool. I've got a, let me see, what are you? You are the fast slave button. That'll be also associated with the with this instrument, I would think, so that it would just provide me with a quick way to calibrate it. Press that, and it's going to slave over to, assuming I have power on the aircraft, I believe it'll slave over to the magnetic heading automatically. I think that's what will happen there. I could be mistaken. Okay, then I have a three function gauge right here, and I'm going to have to go to the reference on this real quick. And my little cheat sheet again kind of lets me down. So let's kind of make an inference here. This is going to be pressures, possibly oil, fuel pressure, and oil temperature. That's just a wild guess on my part. I think we'll see that and get some better indications as we get into this and see it in action. Okay, then I have another pressure gauge. Maybe this is fuel pressure right here. And again, yeah, I'll be able to get that into more detail. It might actually call it out as we get into the procedure for the quick start. Okay, we have like a voltmeter over here, so I'm going to be looking for, it's a 28 volt system. It's all kind of direct current, run off the battery and off of the engine mounted generator. So I'll be looking for anywhere around 28 volts right there, and I have like a little push to what did that say? Ampere and voltmeter, push to view volts. So it shows amps, how many amps that I'm pulling off of the battery or off the generator, which will be handy because that'll be neat to play with, because in theory what would happen there is that each time you flip a switch on, your current load is going to increase, and of course the more current you have being pulled, the more strain it puts on the system. So we should be able to see as we flip switches on, the amps slowly increase. That'll be kind of neat. And then you push it to have the voltage displayed. Okay, so 2 functions on that dial. Very cool. Okay, this switch, pitot and clock heater switch on and off. So it's kind of tucked away up there. Be kind of an easy one to forget all about. Okay, then we have another gauge down here. It's another one that the little quick reference sheet right here is kind of letting me down on. But it appears to have 2 functions, and we'll be able to scope this out here momentarily. And of course, the center gauge, that's got to be the either the exhaust gas temperature or turbine temperature. That'll be like engine temperature right there on that big center gauge. Okay, so let's keep coming around. Okay, we have 2. Okay, this is going to be tied into the pneumatic system. I can see, but just by the pressures. Now this is emergency flaps valve. So I have like a hydraulic system running the primary flap and landing gear system, and I also have like an emergency system that I can control using, emergency gears and emergency flaps, using this panel to provide a backup extension and maybe retraction system for the gear and the flaps. Okay, so this is obviously electrical controls right here. I've got, let me see, this would have to be the battery. It says accumulator. That's I know that's the battery switch, just from reading through it a couple of times real quick. Generator, I've got, okay, nose light, radio, artificial horizon, and GGMK3, whatever that is. I've got trim, I've got, okay, bombs, and we've already seen these, and also the bomb switch. I've got emergency drop switch on, arc switch, and radar altimeter switch. As the MiG-15, are you the same one that just took off? 364, I believe you are. Coming back into shots. Okay, so yeah, we've already seen that, and that's just essentially just power switches for the different systems. As this guy taxis on by again. It's always cool to watch stuff going on in these missions, so. Alright, very cool. And now this is quite obviously going to be more communications, navigation type instruments. So this is, okay, left right UV rheostat, and this is going to be cockpit lighting. I believe these apply to these sort of cockpit floodlights. Okay, and this, yeah, I'll get to more detail on this system as we go. Arc 5, so yeah, okay, communications. Okay, I've got a emergency system filling valve right here, so depending on the status of the system, like if I were to happen to deplete part of this system, I believe I would be able to come over here and I would be able to refill these bottles from like another main bottle somewhere back there way behind us in the fuselage. Okay, so yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to learn on this pneumatic system, which is kind of the highlight of this the Russian aircraft, to me at least. Okay, now we've got this, and this is going to be the cockpit pressurization system, and we have some different functions on here that apply to pressurizing the cockpit and also controlling the cabin heating and cabin cooling. And just from some other reading and just from some other stuff that I've seen, the MiG-15 was notoriously hot at low altitude, notoriously cold at high altitude. So we have this system right here that is going to give us somewhat of a cabin temperature control, but it was notoriously fluky. Okay, so coming on around, just got a map case, and I've got RSI 6 forced mode on and off. Wow, I have no idea what that is. And I've never seen an aircraft that's just thrown me for such a loop when it comes to the flow of the aircraft. I mean, you got stuff scattered all over the place in this thing. It's surprising to see that it's this scattered around. Okay, cockpit filling valve, and I believe this is just a valve that, let me see, an air net valve. I've got to see exactly what these are. We'll get to that. And I've also got an additional navigation or possibly communication, RSI-6K wave control. Huh, okay, I think that's, I'm not sure if that's communication or navigation, to be honest, but that's what we're here to find out. So yeah, I am just completely thrown for a loop. This is going to be, I think, the startup and shutdown. The basic, and that's the weird thing about this, is that the basic controls make sense. Okay, I've got like engine controls, fuel controls, main panel. I've got oxygen over here. I've got electrical up here. I've got some emergency and navigation systems up here. And it's really just the communications and navigation that's just scattered all over the place. And you know what I would imagine happened here is that since this is the BIS, it's the kind of like the second in the series, is that a lot of the basic controls that were included in the MiG-15, and this is just a, you know, just an assumption on my part, they would have made a lot of sense on the basic MiG-15 model, but as more and more modifications and upgrades to the system getting introduced, you got to put the stuff in the cockpit somewhere, and you know, at that point, you just start putting stuff wherever it fits. And I think that's exactly what happened here. It's started out simple and kind of over time got very, very complex on us. And that's not to say it's that complex. I think this will be a lot easier than it looks. It's just a matter of figuring out a better flow. Okay, so that's a look around the cockpit, and that's just the overall setup here. Now, I did miss a couple of things up here, of course. What are you? Okay, ventilation valve. So that's going to be tied into the ECS system, the same system that we run from down here as well. So it looks like that's just maybe like a direct airflow valve right there. That's obviously just either an inlet or an outlet for the ECS system, either ducting air into the cockpit or out. And of course I've got the magnetic compass up here, and we've seen the gun sight already. Alright, anything behind me that looks cool or looks interesting? No, just your standard canopy. Alright, so I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and get into the cold start. And I have no idea how these are going to... I usually take a break every 15-20 minutes, but when I get into these, I have no idea now how long I've been talking, so it might be kind of weird, the places that I put a break in. I might just do it in the middle of a procedure, but oh well. I want to make these about 15 or 20 minutes just because that's typically, well, that's actually stretching it a bit for how long people tend to stay around, especially in videos like this where I tend to ramble. If you're still with me at this point, we're of a like mind, so it's you that I'm doing these for, so thanks a lot for sticking around with me.